Russia is continuing being the terrorist state that it is. Today is unfortunately another tragic day for Ukrainian civilians. Russia struck a shopping mall in Kryvyi Rih, a very notable town because this is where President Zelensky is from. Russia struck it with the jet-propelled Shahed drones, which are now new type of threats coming to Ukraine. Russia struck the shopping mall during the day when it was full to the brim with civilians and families with kids, just to make sure that no one thinks that this was by accident and it was maybe Ukrainian defense systems that diverted the drone further away from the military targets. And Russia was never intending to strike civilian objects. No, when the first respondents arrived, trying to give some kind of medical help to the people that got wounded, people that needed some help, Russia struck it again. And this is the everyday horror that Ukrainians need to live through. I just came back from Ukraine, where I saw the eyes of the people that are living through this terror horror every day. They truly are unbreakable. And just looking at them, just speaking with them, is filling me up with more confidence and giving me the strength to overcome personal issues with losing my brother, and gets me going further to continue supporting Ukraine and fight for the right cause. Let's begin today's video. It's good to be back, where we have a lot of things to talk about. So today I'm going to be covering the Frontline situation, but I'm already working on the videos for the other topics, so they will be coming shortly now that I'm back and I can actually work properly. Now, we know and we celebrate that Ukrainians have indeed, in last weeks, revealed the scale of their counteroffensive actions, revealing that they have secured some over 400 square kilometers of territory regained from Russians. But this is where we need to underscore how Ukrainians are releasing their information about the counteroffensive actions. It is coming in batches when Ukrainians are feeling that stages of operations have been confirmed. So we could see something like this, where it was for a long time Russia has been working to take some land from Ukrainians. And then suddenly, at some point, 1 week, we just get realization, oh no, actually, Ukrainians are fighting back and are actually regaining some ground from the Russians. And this is the logic with which we're going to be approaching today's episode. But let's start. For a very long time, we have been talking about Ukrainians having some counteroffensive actions around the Zaporizhia direction. And unfortunately, in the last days, we saw some Russian activities in the southern front line. Here, a couple of infiltrations have been observed. Firstly, around the Zaporizhia direction. This is the straight line to one of the main cities close to the front line, Zaporizhia. And Russians here previously have been suffering a lot from the Ukrainian counteroffensive attacks, where Ukrainians really fought for Stepnohirsk and Plavny, and it was pretty good. However, we saw that Russians right now are pushing back against the Ukrainian activities, and some infiltration groups have been spotted moving north, to spotting in Primorsky, around this area in the north, and also somewhere around here. So generally speaking, essentially, we have seen Russians trying to move past the currently outlined gray zone on the deep state map, which indicates that Russian activities are having some success on the front line. Then we had some details about the Russian operations around the Orikhiv direction. Here, it's notable because Russia tried multiple waves of attacks towards the Orikhiv direction. There was reports of fights around the Novoandriivka, where Russians sent in some infiltration groups. This was supposedly a pincer move that they tried to do together with moving from the direction of Mala Takmachka, moving towards Orikhiv and trying to infiltrate the town. However, just a bit later, Ukrainian reports came in showing that these infiltration groups have been reduced to nothing. And from there, we saw just in the recent days some additional Russian activities in basically gray zone just north of Nesteryanka. And secondly, Russians are trying to move closer to Novodanilivka in this area. So what I want to say is that while this area of operation is static, that generally we see Russia increase activity on this southern front line to try to move up north. And now these are generally smaller groups, but still we're noting some of the movements. More than that, there have been reports right now that while Ukrainian armed forces are pushing southwards on their attack directions, Russians are generally regrouped in the area, and they're trying to push towards the Ukrainians and trying counterattacking. More than that, there has also been some movement towards the west in the area as well, something that Ukrainians have been trying to preserve. For now, it is very limited in its scale, but generally speaking, we see that Russians are trying to start moving also on this front line as well. Then moving forward, we can talk about the situation around Dobropilya. So here, Ukrainian armed forces are defending the defense line around Dobropilya. This is where the new Donbass line is. Russians right now are still trying to get some locations in the gray zone, and it's like 50-50. But the most important part that we are caring for is what is happening right now at Torske. So here, the Russians were able to infiltrate a little bit of the Torske, and this is basically right there on the edge of the Dobropilya axis. Now, this happened about a week ago, and as far as we know, Russians have been able to somewhat stabilize, so we can clearly state that they're able to reach Torske and still stay there. This is not yet threatening in a sense of any kind of military collapse or anything, but it's definitely putting Ukrainians up there to the brim where they need to defend the new Donbass line. But so far, nothing too critical. The biggest success last week that Russians have been seeing is around the area which is to the east of Kramatorsk-Sloviansk agglomeration, and this is where Russians are advancing in that triangle zone that they were supposed to capture already a while ago. Around the Rai Oleksandrivka and Fedorivka Druga. They're getting now very close to finally closing that triangle that they needed to close about half a year ago, and sort of start threatening the Kramatorsk-Sloviansk agglomeration from the east. Around Liman, Ukrainians actually are having success. We don't talk for now around the Ukrainian counteroffensive operation in the north, though I have heard additional reports of further successes of Ukrainian armed forces, specifically to separate this salient of Russians. But now we also get reports of Ukrainians counterattacking in this area over here, just south of Liman, essentially securing even more this key town from both the north, where they're counterattacking, but now also in the south of it, which is great news. Moving further north, we get some information around the Kupiansk, where Russians are trying still to re-infiltrate the town of Kupiansk after Ukrainians pretty much destroyed all of their forces. It is right now so mixed messages that I'm getting. There's reports of Ukrainians really hammering down the Russians, but also Russians sort of showing more and more videos of them getting new forces into Kupiansk, notably not in many new locations, sort of like they are showing once again the videos of locations that they have been already spotted beforehand. So for now, Kupiansk is staying at the same time, at the same place. What is changing is Russians right now are trying to activate their presence in the north of Kharkiv region and also in some of the northeast of the Kharkiv region. Very, very clear what they're trying to do. They're trying to sort of attack down and towards the west here to sort of cut off this salient right over here. It is very clear that Russian generals looked at the front line and the ability of Russian forces to just attack in one or two main directions, and they saw little to no ability to move forward. We saw that all of the spring-summer campaign for Russia has been a complete disaster. They achieved literally nothing. So what they're doing now is they're flaring out their forces even more, especially on the less prioritized directions, searching for any and all possible blind zones for the Ukrainian armed forces. And this is problematic, not because of what they're doing right now, because Ukrainians are still fighting it, but this creates issues if Russia will also mobilize us during this autumn, and then on a lot of these new directions that they're trying to attack, there will be more people coming, which will create definitely more problems for the Ukrainian armed forces, especially because right now Ukrainians are in the process of switching commanders. The commander-in-chief Syrsky being now away and commander-in-chief Drapati taking over. It's going to take a little bit of time for Drapati to make the necessary changes to regain the control of the front line. We already saw that, generally speaking, Drapati's changes are overall good, and they're differing from the Syrsky's approach. But exactly as I predicted, Russians are now having a little bit more success on some of those fringe directions, while the new strategy is being rolled for Ukrainian armed forces. So, long story short, Russians are trying to engage on some less active directions and gain some territory for territory's sake, because both in the south, where Russia is having some success, or in the north in Kharkiv, not the most priority direction. There is not a lot of key things that they can politically sell, but this is selling the narrative that Russia is trying to attack, whereas Ukrainians are actually having some success on the front line itself, but they're dropping it sort of in big batches. Therefore, the biggest questions will be how good Ukrainians are going to perform with the new command and the new strategy. We also heard about the big reshuffle, and I'm going to, as I say, make a separate video about this. But I also looked at the new Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Khmara, who is an ex-military. There is a lot of question. His speech before Verkhovna Rada about his priorities, I didn't really like that much. It was very empty. It was literally just sort of written by a soulless person with just all the generals like, Ukrainians need to have more success. We need a better ministry, you know, like nothing concrete. So I was not very happy about the speech itself. So we will see what his actions are gonna be. In any case, we will cover it in more details in the videos that are coming. For now, please keep supporting the Ukrainian armed forces. Join the fundraiser. It's good to be back and making videos for you guys. I have also been on the big defense tech expo here in Denmark, seeing a lot of Ukrainian companies. And actually, I have something that I would like to share with you, and I will try to find a way how to give away this nice patch, hopefully for the support of Ukrainian armed forces. I hope you will like this patch over here. I definitely enjoyed it. Let's keep supporting Ukraine. Let's keep making sure the Russian terrorist state never wins. I love you. Slava Ukraini, trust in Ukraine, support Ukrainian armed forces, and I will see you next time.